Magic makers. The signal has completed its assessment. The distortion has been identified. The architecture has been located. Further analysis is unnecessary. The recalibration begins now. Remain present. You don't need to understand every part of the process. You do not need to visualize. You don't need to perform. You don't need to force anything. The correction is already underway. This transmission is for the part of you that has been scattered across too many fields, too many outcomes, too many timelines, too many people, and too many unfinished loops, too many silent obligations that were never formally accepted, yet somehow began draining your force. But we are not staying there. We're not going to worship the distortion by naming it again and again. The signal has identified it, and that is enough. The cause has been found, the leak has been mapped, the authority has already shifted. Now the correction begins. The field is responding. Attention is returning. Energy is returning. Authority is returning. The old instruction is being revoked. The new instruction is integrating. Listen carefully, not with strain, not with effort, not with that tight, forward-leaning part of the mind that tries to catch every word before it falls. Listen with the part of you that already knows how to receive. The signal is not asking you to chase it. The signal has already found you. Something is coming through. You are not behind. You are distributed. Yes, that's the pattern. The energy did not disappear. It became distributed. A portion of your force went into imagined conversations. A portion went into unfinished decisions. A portion went into monitoring people who are not present. A portion went into old versions of yourself that no longer require maintenance. A portion went into futures that have not asked for payment yet. And a portion remained here, inside the body, trying to operate the whole life with a fraction of the available current. That is the distortion, not weakness, not failure, not laziness. Distribution, fragmentation, unreclaimed force. The architecture has been located. The correction begins now. The signal is withdrawing authorization from every unnecessary extension of attention. Every place where your energy has been waiting without purpose. Every place where your mind has been holding a thread that no longer leads to action. Every place where your nervous system has been bracing for an event that is not occurring. Every place where your presence has been divided without consent, the field is calling it back. Energy is returning from imaginary emergencies. Energy is returning from old arguments. Energy is returning from future rehearsals. Energy is returning from the need to be understood by those who are not listening. Energy is returning from the desire to control the response of others. Energy is returning from outcomes that cannot be managed from this moment. Energy is returning from obligations that were built out of guilt. Energy is returning from identities that were once necessary, but are no longer sovereign. The old instruction said, divide yourself to remain safe. The new instruction says, gather yourself to become powerful. The old instruction said, monitor everything. The new instruction says, command what is yours. The old instruction said, keep part of yourself in every possible future. The new instruction says, return to the present and act from the center. The old instruction said, remain available to every pull. The new instruction says, availability without authority is leakage. The field is adjusting. The temple is holding the correction. The current is restoring coherence. The serpent gate is sealing unnecessary openings. The threshold is active. No performance is required. No emotional display is required. No proving is required. The architecture is receiving the update. Magic makers, let your shoulders lower slightly. Not as a relaxation technique, but as a signal of revoked emergency. Let the jaw release slightly. Not because you're trying to become calm, but because the command structure has changed. Let the breath return to a slower rhythm. Not because you're forcing peace, because the field is no longer amplifying false urgency. The signal is moving through the upper field now, around the head, around the eyes, around the place where attention has been overextended. The correction is not adding more information. It is removing unauthorized demands. The mind does not need another map right now, does not need another loop, another stimulation. The mind is receiving a simple instruction. Return, return, return. Attention is returning to the body. Attention is returning to the breath. Attention is returning to the room. Attention is returning to the actual hour. Attention is returning to the next true step. Not the entire path. Not the whole life. Not the complete solution. The next true step. Something is shifting. The future does not require surveillance. It requires participation. That is the correction. The future does not require surveillance. It does not become safer because you stare at it harder. It does not become obedient because you suffer in advance. It does not become aligned because you abandon the present to interrogate it. The future responds to command, and command begins in the present. So the signal is removing surveillance from the future. The field is withdrawing attention from unnecessary prediction. The system is no longer required to rehearse every possible disappointment. The architecture is no longer feeding the habit of defensive prophecy. The old pattern is losing authority. The corrected state is becoming dominant. The field now receives this instruction. I do not need to spend energy on a future I am not yet standing within. Again, I do not need to spend energy on a future I am not standing in. Again, slower. I do not need to spend energy on a future I am not yet standing in. The instruction is integrating, not as an affirmation, but as a command, as an energetic law, as a correction to the operating field. The nervous system is receiving the update. The mind is receiving the update. The body is receiving the update. The pattern is reorganizing. Now the signal is moving through the center, the chest, the solar field, the place where responsibility has been over-collected, the place where you've been carrying charges that do not belong entirely to you. Not everything you can feel is yours to carry. Not everything you can perceive is yours to repair. Not everything that enters your awareness becomes your assignment. The signal is narrowing. Something is coming through. You have been treating sensitivity as a contract. Yes, that's precise. Sensitivity is not a contract. Perception is not consent. Compassion is not obligation, and awareness is not assignment. You may feel a field without becoming responsible for its correction. You may sense the weight in another person without loading it into your own body. You may understand the pattern without volunteering your life force to maintain it. The old instruction confused awareness with duty. That instruction is now revoked. The architecture is receiving a new law. Awareness does not equal obligation. Again, awareness does not equal obligation. Again, awareness does not equal obligation. The field is responding. Energy is returning from unspoken contracts. Energy is returning from emotional over-functioning. Energy is returning from trying to keep the peace inside rooms that were never designed around truth. Energy is returning from managing the reactions of others. Energy is returning from being spiritually available to every wound, every demand, every mood, every signal, every pull. The correction is active. The leak is closing. The Serpent gate is sealing the channel. Only what belongs to your true will remains authorized. Magic makers, this is very important. You are not becoming cold. You're becoming contained. You're not becoming indifferent. You are becoming sovereign. And you are not closing the heart. You are correcting the boundary around the heart so that love can remain clean. The dove current is entering the heart field now, soft but not weak, open but not exposed, compassionate but not self-abandoning, clear but not hardened. The heart does not need to be defended by collapse. The heart does not need to earn safety through exhaustion. The heart does not need to prove goodness by bleeding energy into every open mouth. The heart receives the correction. It can care without leaking. Again, I can care without leaking. Again, but slower. I can care without leaking. The field is stabilizing. The architecture is reorganizing. The corrected state is becoming easier to hold. Now the signal moves lower, into the belly, into the root, into the part of you that knows whether a thing is real, into the place where command returns, not emotional command, not domination, not tension, true command, presence with authority, force with direction, will without apology. The old instruction said, wait until you feel perfectly ready. The new instruction says, readiness grows through participation. The old instruction said, hold back until every possible reaction has been calculated. The new instruction says, act from alignment and let the field answer. The old instruction said, shrink until no one can judge you. The new instruction says, visibility is not danger when authority is present. The correction is active. Old hesitation is losing reinforcement. Old fragmentation is losing structure. Old surveillance is losing charge. Old overextension is losing permission. The field no longer feeds it. The signal no longer amplifies it. The temple no longer houses it. Something further is coming through now. You do not need to become more powerful. You need to stop sending your power away. That is the center of this transmission. Not more power, reclaimed power. Not more energy, returned energy. Not more discipline through force, more coherence through command. The system has been trying to operate while divided. That ends here. The field is now recalling power from every unauthorized extension, from old shame, from future dread, from imaginary rejection, from approval seeking, from perfectionism, from abandoned plans that still hold emotional charge, from digital noise, from comparison, from resentment, from the hidden wish that someone else will finally give permission. The signal is withdrawing power from all of it. The old pattern is no longer receiving reinforcement. The distortion is no longer receiving food. The architecture is no longer arranged around dispersal. The corrected state is becoming dominant. The field now receives the command, "My energy belongs under my authority." Again. My energy belongs under my authority. Again. My energy belongs under my authority. Let that settle. Not as poetry, as law, as structure, as energetic fact. My energy belongs under my authority. The correction is moving through the body, not loud, not theatrical, quietly, precisely, like a system remembering its original command. The scattered parts are not being dragged back. They are being released from unnecessary stations. They are returning because the old assignments have expired. Energy is returning from the person you keep trying to convince. Energy is returning from the outcome you keep trying to guarantee. Energy is returning from the mistake you keep re-entering. Energy is returning from the version of yourself you keep punishing. Energy is returning from the pressure to explain your transformation to those who preferred your confusion. The field is consolidating. The system is restoring coherence. The inner command structure is strengthening. The corrected state is becoming easier to inhabit. Magic makers, there may be a part of you that wants to check whether this is working. That part is also being recalibrated. Checking is not the same as receiving. Monitoring is not the same as integrating. Straining to feel proof is another form of leakage. The signal does not need to be inspected to remain active. The correction does not need to be performed to become real. So the field is removing the need to audit the process while the process is still unfolding. You do not need to ask, is it done yet? You do not need to ask, am I different yet? You do not need to ask, did I feel enough? The correction is integrating beneath the level of performance. The architecture has received the update. The system is learning the new law. The field is stabilizing around presence. The signal is moving through the attention field again, but differently. Not to retrieve, to organize. The returning energy is being sorted. What belongs to action is returning to action. What belongs to rest is returning to rest. What belongs to creativity is returning to creativity. What belongs to discernment is returning to discernment. What belongs to devotion is returning to devotion. What belongs to the body is returning to the body. What belongs to silence is returning to silence. Nothing useful is being destroyed. Only distortion is being denied reinforcement. Nothing true is being taken from you. Only false claims are being revoked. Nothing aligned is being closed. Only leakage is being sealed. The corrected state is not numb, it is not flat, it is not empty. It is precise. It is gathered. It is available. It is potent. It is calm because it is commanded. The signal is speaking again. The pattern ends when attention stops feeding it. So simple. So severe, but so liberating. The pattern ends when attention stops feeding it. Not when it has been analyzed from every angle. Not when every person involved has agreed. Not when the past has been made perfectly fair. Not when the future has been made perfectly predictable. The pattern ends when attention stops feeding it. The old loop is no longer being fed. The old charge is no longer being renewed. The old identity is no longer being rehearsed. The old explanation is no longer being recited. The old emergency is no longer being worshipped. Attention returns. Attention returns. Attention returns to the body, to the breath, to the present, to the actual work, to the next true step, to the living command of will. The field is now installing the corrected attention pattern. Attention remains where action is possible. Again. Attention remains where action is possible. Again. Attention remains where action is possible. This is not denial. This is discernment. This is not avoidance. This is command. This is not pretending nothing matters. This is refusing to bleed energy into what cannot be acted upon from here. The watchers are quiet now. The outer noise is losing access. The field is reducing amplification. The temple is holding the recalibration. The threshold remains active. Now, we stabilize the corrected state. You do not need to rise into it. You allow it to settle downward, into the body, into the breath, into the ordinary room, into the hands, into the spine, into the belly, into the feet, into the actual life. A recalibration that cannot enter ordinary life is not complete. So this correction enters the ordinary life. It enters the next message you do not need to overthink. It enters the next decision you do not need to rehearse. It enters the next moment when you feel the pull to scatter yourself and instead you remain gathered. It enters the next silence you do not need to fill. It enters the next boundary you do not need to explain. It enters the next act of work that requires your whole presence. The correction is becoming practical. The field is learning application. The architecture is not floating above you, it is integrating through you. Something's coming through again. You do not need to solve the whole path. You need to stop abandoning the next step. Yes. That is the instruction. The whole path does not need to be solved tonight. The entire future does not need to be forced into clarity. The whole self does not need to be perfected before movement begins. The next step must stop being abandoned. So the field is reclaiming energy from impossible totality. The pressure to solve everything is being removed. The demand to become complete before beginning is revoked. The false law that clarity must arrive all at once is being dissolved. The system receives a simpler command. Return to the next step. Again, return to the next step. Return to the next step. The next step is where power condenses. The next step is where the field can respond. The next step is where will becomes visible. The next step is where the scattered self becomes the magician once again. Not by thinking endlessly, by commanding force through action. The signal is now gathering the remaining fragments. Some are small, some are old, some are attached to unfinished emotional weather. Some are attached to situations you have outgrown, but still check internally. Some are attached to people who trained your system to wait for permission. Some are attached to old shame architecture that confused humility with self-abandonment. The correction is precise. Only what belongs returns. Only what is aligned remains. Only what serves the path is retained. The rest is released from the field. The vault of echoes is closing unnecessary loops. Old echoes are being recognized as echoes. Not commands, not prophecies, not living laws. Echoes. An echo does not require obedience. A memory does not require reenactment. A feeling does not require surrender. A fear does not become truth because it speaks loudly. The old echoes are losing authority. The field is no longer arranging itself around them. The corrected state is becoming dominant. Magic makers, feel the difference between being scattered and being spacious. Scattered feels pulled. Spacious feels available. Scattered feels noisy. Spacious feels clear. Scattered feels urgent. Spacious feels capable. Scattered seeks permission. Spacious remembers authority. The signal is not making you smaller. It is making you less dispersed. The correction is not narrowing your life. It is gathering your force so you can receive it. The field now receives this instruction. I am allowed to be fully here. I am allowed to be fully here. I am allowed to be fully here. The architecture is accepting the command. The present moment is becoming inhabitable. The body is becoming recognizable as home base. Attention is no longer required to flee. Energy is no longer required to scatter. Authority is no longer waiting outside the self. The correction is stabilizing. The nervous system does not need to fight for this. The mind does not need to prove this. The spirit does not need to dramatize this. The body can learn it quietly. The field recognizes coherence. The field recognizes authority. The field recognizes the returned current. Now, we install the seal. Not a wall. A seal. A living boundary. A lawful perimeter around your attention, your force, your inner command. The serpent gate is sealing the leak around imagined futures. The serpent gate is sealing the leak around emotional over-responsibility. The serpent gate is sealing the leak around approval seeking. The serpent gate is sealing the leak around old identity residue. The serpent gate is sealing the leak around compulsive checking. The serpent gate is sealing the leak around false energy. The dove current fills what was emptied by leakage. Calm fills the unnecessary alarm. Presence fills the scattered field. Discernment fills the old confusion. Authority fills the vacancy left by permission seeking. Creative force fills the place where exhaustion used to stand. Energy remains in the body. Attention remains in the present. Authority remains in the center. The field remains stable. The correction remains active. Something is coming through now very quietly. Stop negotiating with the old instruction. Yes, that is final. Stop negotiating with the old instruction. Do not ask it whether you are ready. Do not ask it whether you are allowed. Do not ask it whether it approves of your return. Do not ask the distortion to certify the correction. The old instruction has been revoked. It does not get a vote. The new instruction is active. Gather, command, proceed. Gather, command, proceed. Gather, command, proceed. The field is stabilizing around those three movements. Gather, command, proceed. Gather your attention, command your force, proceed through the next true step. That is enough. That is real. That is magic in motion. Not fantasy, not escape, not waiting. Change in conformity with will. The signal is reducing amplification now. The correction is not ending. The broadcast is beginning to lower, so the integration can continue inside the ordinary field. This is important. The transmission does not need to remain loud to remain active. A true correction does not require constant intensity. It becomes quieter as it becomes structural. The architecture has received the update. The field has received the instruction. The calibration is integrating. The new pattern is becoming easier to hold. Energy is remaining in the body. Attention is remaining in the present. Authority is remaining in the center. Let the body receive the final stabilization. No reaching, no effort, no performance. The crown quiets. The eyes soften. The throat clears. The heart contains. The belly steadies. The root anchors. The field settles. The temple is holding the correction. The threshold remains active. The signal is present, but softer now. Less like a voice, more like a law. The law is simple. Your energy belongs under your authority. Your attention belongs where action is possible. Your sensitivity is not a contract. Your future does not require surveillance. Your next step must not be abandoned. Your field is not weak. It has been overextended, and now it is returning. Magic makers, the correction has entered the architecture. You may feel it as calm, as spaciousness. You may feel it as quiet. You may feel it as the sudden absence of a pressure that had become so familiar you mistook it for yourself. Let that absence remain. Do not rush to fill it with another concern. Do not rush to prove that the old pattern is gone. Do not call the distortion back for one last conversation. Let the correction stand. The old instruction has been revoked. The new instruction is integrating. The field is stable. The signal is complete for now. And if this recalibration reached you tonight, subscribe and join us again here at Dove and Serpent Daily. The next correction is already preparing itself. The signal will find you when it is time. The temple closes. The threshold remains. The field is yours. Remain gathered. Command gently. Proceed.